or in person have had their opportunity to have their technical test and their language functioning training. Donc, je déclare cette réunion.
So I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 2 of the Standing House Committee on Agriculture and Agri-Food. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. Regarding the list of the speaking order, the clerk and I will do our best to ensure it is equitable for everyone participating virtually or in person.
Those that are in the room, I would ask that you abide by the health principles that are being enforced by the Board of Internal Economy. And of course, we're here pursuant to Standing Order 108 sub 2 in the motion adopted by the committee on December 16th. The committee is commencing its study on the interim suspension of certificate of all potatoes from PEI to the United States. I just want to take the opportunity. I know we have a couple members that are joining here that are not regular members. Mr. Calkins on behalf of Mr. Steinley, welcome, Mr. Calkins. Mr. Morrissey on behalf of Ms. Taylor-Roy, Mr. Morrissey, welcome. And Mr. McDonald, I know that you are going to be participating in the meeting, so welcome to you. And to our witnesses from CFIA, Ms. Sadiqa Methani, who is the president, Ms. Sylvie Lapointe, who serves as the VP of Policy and Programs Branch, and David Bailey, who is the acting executive director of Policy and the Programs Branch, and to our representatives from the government of Prince Edward Island, Deputy Minister Brian Matheson, and to Carolyn Sanford, who serves as the Director of Animal Health, Regulatory and Analytical Laboratories. Welcome to all our guests, our witnesses. We are going to get started. A reminder to our members to be silent, to silent your microphone when you're not speaking. And we're going to get started with 5-minute opening statements. First with CFIA, Ms. Methani, followed by 5 minutes from Mr. Matheson. Over to you, Ms. Methani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to address Agri Committee members today. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm addressing you from Ottawa on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. Je vais vous adresser la parole.
I will be speaking to you in English, but I want to assure you that you can ask your questions and make your comments in the official language of your choice.
I have asked the following individuals from the CFIA to join me today to help address the pressing questions the members of this committee will wish to advance. With me here today are Sylvie Lapointe, Vice President, Program and Policies Branch, and David Bailey, Chief Plant Health Officer of Canada and Executive Director of Plant Health and Biosecurity Directorate. First and foremost, on behalf of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency as a whole, I want to acknowledge the deep impacts our colleagues and their families and friends who live and work in PEI are experiencing as a result of the 2 latest findings of potato wart in October of this year. Mr. Chair, let me start by stating that the CFIA works with stakeholders to develop national farm-level biosecurity standards and producer guidance documents for several crop and animal-based sectors. The development process is supported by CFIA in partnership with the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food under the Growing Forward Agricultural Policy Framework. Crop biosecurity prevents, minimizes, and controls the introduction and spread of plant pests at the farm level. Let me start with the overarching potato wart domestic long-term management plan, which was agreed upon with the United States and was put in place following the first detection in PEI in the year 2000. As part of this plan, land restriction controls are put in place on individual fields to restrict the movement of affected potatoes, plants, soil, and other articles that could result in the spread of potato wart outside of the regulatory fields. There have been 33 detections of potato wart in PEI in the last 21 years, including 1 detection in 2020 and the other 2 recent October 2021 detections. With 3 detections in 12 months and 2 ongoing investigations, the U.S. Department of Agriculture Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, or APHIS, indicated that they would seek to amend their existing federal order to prohibit the import of all fresh potatoes from PEI. U.S. federal orders prohibit or restrict the importation or entry of any plant part, or article if they determine that the prohibition or restriction is necessary to prevent the introduction or dissemination of a plant pest into or within the United States. With knowledge of pending changes to the existing U.S. federal order, it was deemed necessary to proceed with a voluntary suspension of export certification of PEI fresh potatoes destined to the U.S. The CFIA also introduced separate new measures through a ministerial order to restrict the movement of potatoes from PEI to the rest of Canada as a means of preventing the spread of the pest. The current risk mitigation measures prevent the transmission of potato wort from fresh potatoes produced in regulated fields. These risk measures align with those in the 2015 U.S. federal order. The CFIA stands firmly on the science behind these measures and believes they reduce any risk of potato wort spread to a negligible level. APHIS is seeking clear scientific data demonstrating that the resumption of trade is safe and is looking for assurances that the quarantined area is controlled and does not pose a risk. To this end, the CFIA is committed to sharing details from its ongoing investigations into potato wort in PEI. As you will know by now, timelines associated with an investigation such as this depend on a number of factors. And although we are accelerating efforts for sampling and testing, the completion of the investigation is difficult to project, and its accuracy cannot be compromised by expediency for fear of not satisfying the import requirements of a desired market. Mr. Chair, in an effort to keep my remarks as brief as possible, I may have omitted to cover specific items of interest or neglected to provide the desired level of detail. So with that, my colleagues and I remain available to take questions, and we will endeavor to answer them to the best of our abilities. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We're going to now proceed to Mr. Matheson. 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, committee members. I would like to thank you for the invitation to speak with you today. My name is Brian Matheson. I am the Deputy Minister of the Prince Edward Island Department of Agriculture and Land. I'm joined today by Dr. Carolyn Sanford, who is our Policy and Regulatory ADM within the province. My comments today will provide you with information on the value of the potato industry to PEI, the current potato wort situation, and the associated impact this has had on the economy and the mental health of farmers in the province, programs implemented by the province that offer financial assistance to respond and adapt to the trade restrictions, and key points to consider in the future. The closure of U.S. borders to Prince Edward Island potatoes has had negative consequences for the province, its economy, and potato farmers. PEI's potato sector is extremely important to the province's economy and culture, and its impacts extend beyond this jurisdiction's borders. The PEI potato sector has an economic impact of $1.3 billion on PEI's economy, with over 5,000 jobs supported in Prince Edward Island. In addition, the sector also contributes $544.7 million to other Canadian provinces, adds $784.6 million to the national GDP, creates over 2,000 jobs outside of PEI, and contributes over $24 million in taxes outside of our jurisdiction. The sector, therefore, contributes to economies across Canada. The vast majority of PEI's potatoes and potato products are exported to other provinces or abroad. In 2019, international exports of PEI potatoes, which include fresh, seed, and processed potatoes, totaled $406 million. The United States represents 84% of PEI's total international potato exports and is therefore an extremely important market for Prince Edward Island. On October 1st and October 14th, 2021, The Canadian Food Inspection Agency confirmed that potato wart was identified in 2 separate processing potato fields in PEI. As a result, on November 2nd, exports of PEI seed potatoes to the United States were put under suspension. And then on November 21st, the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada Minister announced that CFIA would voluntarily suspend trade of fresh potatoes, both table stock potatoes and fresh potatoes for processing, from PEI to the US in addition to the seed ban. A ministerial order was also introduced, which announced new risk mitigation measures for fresh potatoes moving across Canada, which included a ban on the domestic movement of PEI seed potatoes. These decisions have had negative consequences for PEI producers. I would like to underscore that PEI's potatoes are safe, nutritious, and of the highest quality. The Potato Wart Domestic Long-Term Management Plan, put in place following detection in 2000, outlines the mandatory minimum survey, testing, and surveillance activities required with the objective to mitigate the risk of spread of potato wart outside of the restricted areas in PEI. We are confident that the management plan is working. PEI potatoes continue to be safe and of the highest quality and continue to be shipped safely and consumed safely across Canada. There are several additional long-standing processes in place that provide assurances that PEI potatoes are safe. When shipping PEI potatoes across Canada, it is a standard practice for a fresh potato to be washed or dry brushed and or treated with a sprout inhibitor prior to being shipped. Additionally, potatoes are regularly subjected to visual inspections through our post-harvest virus testing program, our Agriculture Insurance Corporation, local processors, and local packers. These measures add additional mitigation to the risk of introduction of disease and are what result in the high quality and outstanding reputation of the PEI potato. PEI farmers have experienced tremendous loss due to the trade suspension. The closure of the US market has not only had a direct economic impact for PEI's potato producers, it's about $100 to $120 million per year in sales, but also created unease among other markets, both domestic and international, that receive PEI potatoes. The province and industry are actively working to provide reassurance to other markets that PEI potatoes are safe and maintain the highest standards of quality. Furthermore, it is important that I highlight the negative impact this situation is having on farmers' mental health. Situations such as the closure of the US border compounds existing mental health stressors for farmers. The department has heard from industry that there have been increases in farmers seeking counseling support. To support the mental health of farmers during this difficult time, the province has increased funding to the Farmer Assistance Program to allow farmers to access counseling support. To provide short-term financial support, the province has also launched a $10 million potato wart emergency fund to assist industry with responding to immediate impacts. Other initiatives underway include a wage support program for potato exporters. This program will provide a wage subsidy for
Mr.
employees.
Matheson,
Yes.
I apologize, and I don't mean to intervene, but we are at our 5 minutes. I even gave you a few extra seconds, and I know my colleagues will be eager to ask questions.
Sure.
So I'm sure you'll be able to get those points out. So we're going to move to the question period. Thank you to both of our witnesses. We're going to start with Mr. Barlow for 6 minutes. And Mr. Barlow, let me just say this. I know that we're waiting on a few for who would come next for the Conservatives. If you want to text that to me or the clerk, we'd appreciate it. And over to you for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and Dave Epp will follow myself in our next round. Thanks to the witnesses and for making time on this important issue. And I know this is something that many MPs and certainly the potato farmers of Prince Edward Island are very keen on hearing some of your responses and maybe some of the insights on why these decisions were made. So I'm sure we have many growers who are paying attention to this today. Ms. Mathoni, thank you very much for making time, for being with us. And I wanted to ask some questions of you first. Did anyone in CFIA or the federal government consult with the PEI government or the potato board in Prince Edward Island on this decision to suspend the export of fresh potatoes to the United States?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. We have been working on the potato wart issue with the province as well as with the stakeholders for a very long time. As the detections came in, the information that was requested was all worked with and collaborated with industry. So we've had a very strong and extensive relationship with our stakeholders as we have been working on the potato wart issue.
So Ms. Matheny, specifically on the decision to have a self-imposed ban on the exports, was that before that decision was announced, did you have that conversation with the government of PEI?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. I think it's important for us to understand that this was not a self-imposed ban. With respect to the plant protection regulations, what the plant protection regulations state is that the only that unless we meet the request of a country, of an importing country, we cannot issue export certificates. The conversations we were having with...
Sorry, Ms. Matheny, we have a limited amount of time, and I appreciate that. But to my question specifically, did you consult the government of Prince Edward Island before announcing the export ban on fresh potatoes from PEI or the PEI Potato Board?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. As I have clearly articulated, it was not a decision on an export ban. It was the fact that the regulations did not allow us to issue export certificates to the U.S. when there were U.S. concerns, when there were concerns from the U.S. with respect to the fact that the potatoes were not meeting the requirements of the imported country. It was very simple. It was just the fact that we were unable to issue export certificates because of the fact that we were not meeting the importing country requirements.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So did you have that conversation with the PEI government before you made that announcement that you were going to be unable to it sounds like a no to me, since you weren't able to answer that. But what about the decision then, Ms. Matheny, about declaring the entirety of the PEI that all of PEI was infested with potato wart? Was that a decision that came specifically only from CFIA?
Thank you very much for the...
Yeah, the wording around that you were infested with potato wart seems fairly extreme.
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. I would say that the language around using the word infestation is actually based on the authority that we have within the regulations, which speaks about declaring an infestation, and as a result, the issuance of a ministerial order that was issued at the time.
Is the CFIA confident in its potato wart management plan?
We are. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We are absolutely confident of our potato wart domestic long-term management plan. It has been in place since 2000.
Okay, since sorry the again. Sorry, Ms. Again, I have limited time. That's what I need to hear. So this plan is enshrined in the 2015 federal order. That is correct as well, in the 2015 U.S. federal order. That's correct.
No, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I would say that the long-term management plan was a plan that was developed and implemented just after the first detection. In 2015, it was modified to align with the federal order that came in 2015. A long-term management plan is an evergreen plan. It is always there, and there is always an opportunity to modify, change, depending on the evaluation of the results.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So both countries have agreed to this plan, and the CFIA, from what I understand, managed this plan according to, or managed this detections according to that plan. So why is the U.S. border closed to PEI potatoes if you followed this monitoring plan that was agreed upon by both countries? Then why is our border closed to the exportation of fresh potatoes from PEI?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I would say that the U.S. does not share Canada's view that there are effective and appropriate risk mitigation measures for fresh potatoes from PEI. Given the pervasiveness of the potato wart on the province, both sides are guided by sound science principles. The difference in perspective really comes from the interpretation of the science results.
Okay, so what has changed when we have an
Mr.
agreement
Barlow,
between both countries?
I apologize, Mr. Barlow, we're at 6 minutes. I know either you or Mr. Epp will be able to carry this on. I want to make sure we stay on time. Mr. McDonald, over to you. Thank you. Mr. McDonald, over to you. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate some of Brian's comments earlier on the devastation to this industry in Prince Edward Island. And we're looking at hardships financially and certainly mentally, as he mentioned, and our reputation as a global supplier of potatoes. So it's extremely important. And there have been some good questions already that I'd like to follow up on. And it's relevant to where the finds of the potato wort were found. They were found in regulated fields. Is that correct?
I'd like to ask, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask David Bailey to respond to the specific questions on the findings. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, for the question. Yes, the findings were found in fields that are regulated and that are for processing.
Thank you, David. Was the soil management plan that was agreed to by the USDA and CFIA in play?
Thank you for the question, Chair. Oh, sorry.
Was it being followed?
Yes, the long-term management plan was being followed. And in fact, it is the long-term management plan that sets the conditions for the investigation that allows us to demonstrate that we have data and information to show where the pest is and is not. And that will be used as part of the conversations with the United States in order to reopen trade. Thank you.
So we talked a little bit about in an earlier question relevant to January 2015. And I'm going to come back to that question as well, is we need to know, and the farmers need to know, what is different now that that wasn't different then. And they made modifications to that order from the US. And I want to know, has anything been explored relevant to the US making more modifications based on you saying you believe 110% in our management, our long-term management plan?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. So a couple of key points here. Fundamentally, what has changed is the United States level of risk tolerance when it comes to this. Second, it is the number of fines in a short period of time. So having 3 fines in the course of less than 1 year. And of course, from a risk assessor's perspective, they are looking at the 21-year history on the island, as the President outlined in the beginning in our opening remarks, with 33 different fines over the course of that time, 3 in the last 12 months. This has caused our United States counterparts to have a pause and look for information in order to manage their own risk assessment of PEI and understand our risk mitigation approach. And this is about their risk tolerance. Thank you.
So our management plan has worked for 20 some years. We ship to 23 countries around the world. We've never once basically sent potato wort to any of those countries because of the management plan. But all of a sudden, there's red flags go up because we had 2 samples tested positive for wart, and the US decide, based on everything that's coming back, is on soil samples, which we'll get into, I'm sure, a little later. So it just, to me, it doesn't make, and to a lot of the farmers, there seems to be issues here relevant to the communications. And, you know, what were the original communications to the USDA on behalf of CFIA, on behalf of our industry?
Thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, I would say that we have been, since the detection of the potato warts in 2021, and as David Bailey has explained, that it was the accumulation of the number of detections where the US have been concerned about this. We have been continuing to work with them, and our discussions with the US have really been based on what is the data, information, analysis that they require in order for us to be be able to resume trade. What we have heard from the US APHIS is that they would like the results from the National Potato Wart Study. They would like results from the investigation into the 2021 detections of potato wart. They want to do a best risk assessment, and they want to also talk about delimitation of potato wart in PEI. So we continue to work with them on a continuous basis around providing the information.
Thank you for that. So there's a mantra in the air that there's miscommunication between our industry, our farmers, and CFIA. Can we access, or can you provide all the correspondence to this date that you've had with USDA and APHIS?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. Conversations and discussions with regulators, from regulator to regulator, are considered confidential. However, I can tell you that we have had many conversations in disseminating those discussions and that information that we get from APHIS on a regular basis. We have a number of working groups, sub-working groups, and there is collaboration around how do we advance the current issue forward and what is it that we require.
Chair, I just have
Thank
one
you.
more.
Sorry,
Okay.
Mr. McDonald, we're at 6 minutes.
Thank you.
Alors, Monsieur Parent,
Mr. Perron, you have 6 minutes. Go ahead. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to understand the reason for this suspension. The correspondence between the United States and Canada is confidential, we've been told. I don't quite understand. Why did we proceed to stop exports? Perhaps Mr. Bailey or Dr. Matheny.
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, I will ask Sylvie to answer.
Oui, merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. As the President stated, based on our regulations in the Plant Protection Act, when we are not able to meet our obligations, the measures set out by another country for the acceptation of exports, we don't have the legal authority to issue a certification of export. Knowing that the United States wouldn't be able to accept seed potatoes or processed potatoes from PEI, we didn't have the choice to temporarily suspend certification. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lapointe. Does that mean that resuming exports will be facilitated by the fact that we're the ones who stopped exports, or does that not change anything? Our experience with federal orders by the Americans is that they can't be changed. We haven't been able to change their decisions. So as you've mentioned, because we've controlled the interim suspension, that will help us reopen the border. Okay. I've done some reading on this, and the procedure for cleaning potatoes implemented in 2015 to reduce the risk of spreading potato wart, is that a process that is still considered effective today? According to us, it's effective. That's why in the ministerial order by Minister Bibeau, we continue to authorize the distribution of washed potatoes from PEI to the rest of Canada. Potatoes are washed, and we used a sprout inhibitor that's regulated in terms of its effectiveness. And so we have full confidence that table stock potatoes from PEI don't pose a risk in terms of potato wart. So if I understand you correctly, and correct me if I'm mistaken, but currently we're sending potatoes from PEI throughout Canada, and we consider there to be no risk of spread of potato wart for Quebec, Ontario, New Brunswick, or elsewhere. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. What's the missing piece for me, and perhaps I haven't understood the agreement with the United States, but if there's no risk here and we're doing it and we're seeing that it's working, why stop trade with the United States rather than try to explain to them that it works well and there's no risk for us, so there's no risk for them? Thank you for the question. As you've mentioned, it's practically impossible to reverse a federal American order. So what we're doing is having technical discussions with them based on scientific guidance and the measures we have to mitigate risk to reopen the border. Okay, thank you for your clear, specific, and short answers. Very much appreciated because we don't have much time. I'll continue. And this is an impression. Are we not acting out of fear rather than standing up for ourselves? And I don't want, but if you think of softwood lumber, where the United States act in a cavalier fashion, if you will, the threat of protectionism for electric vehicles, and now we don't want to have a problem with potatoes. So we will stop our exports, harm our producers, because we're scared it'll be even worse. Is that an accurate read of the situation? Thank you for the question. I can't speak to that in regards to broader trade issues with the United States. What I can assure you of is that if we hadn't put in place the interim suspension on our side, and as I've said, we had no choice in terms of our legal authorities, it's a sure thing that the United States would have closed the border to seed potatoes and table stock potatoes from PEI. Okay, this is something that's been an issue for parliamentarians, the attitude from the United States. So I'd like to know, what do we need to do to get trade flowing again? Because as Mr. Matheson said earlier, 84% of international exports are the United States, so this would lead to major losses. Do you have a timeline? When would trade resume? Given that we're already doing trade within Canada and there's no problem. Thank you for the question. I'm sorry, Mr. Perron. 10 seconds. Ms. Lapointe, if possible. Go ahead. Thank you. We don't have a specific timeline, but it's urgent and it's a priority for us to make progress with table stock potatoes for this border to be reopened because we don't see a risk with potato wart. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Perron. Thank you, Ms. Lapointe.
La prochaine.
The next member is Mr. McGregor for 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for helping guide this committee through this issue. I think I will direct my first question to the CFIA, and I'm hoping the CFIA will just help me help this committee walk through this process. So the fields where the potato wart was recently detected was already under management plan regulations. So those potatoes were already ineligible for export to the United States and to the rest of Canada. I'm just hoping you can walk us through the metrics that are put into place that will lead to a suspension order for exports. Because if those potatoes were already under a management plan, they were not going to be exported. They were not in any danger of infecting other jurisdictions. I mean, is it a single detection of potato wart that leads to an entire province-wide ban? Is the CFIA not able to employ traceability methods and cauterize a wound, and isolate a single farm? Can you just help the committee understand why detections in fields that were not eligible for export led to an entire province-wide ban? Like what metrics are in place that helps you extrapolate to this is a wider problem? Can you just help us understand that, please?
Thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, I would say that this is not about just one detection, closing the borders or declaring an infestation in a province. The long-term management plan has allowed us to look and control and be able to control the spread of the potato wort. From a trade perspective, as I have said, that the issue with the US has been the interpretation of the level of risk tolerance, and that is the science discussion that we are having. And with respect to, it being in the regulated fields, maybe I can ask David Bailey to explain a little bit around how these fields are regulated and what this means.
Yes, and thank you, President, and thank you, Chair, for the question. Yeah, it seems on the surface that it's a simple thing, that it's 2 little fines, but in reality, as I said earlier, it is a succession of fines, so 33 fines over 21 years, 3 in the last 12 months, and it is really the number of fields that become implicated. So if you, from a very straightforward perspective, there's the field in which there was the fine, but then there are fields that are related to the fines, and those fields add up. So in this current context, we're looking at a large amount of acreage that needs to be assessed. And it is the size of that acreage to be assessed that creates the pause on the part of those that look at risk, particularly from a risk tolerance perspective on behalf of our American counterparts.
Thank you. And on that note of risk tolerance, I appreciate that the investigation is ongoing and that you're not able to give this committee a clear timeline as to when it will be complete. And I know scientific results from that laboratory testing are being provided to the USDA, but is there any sense of what, from the United States perspective, is an acceptable level of risk, or as you said, those are ongoing conversations? Like, do you know what the end goal is that will help you achieve your ongoing investigation? At what level will this issue be resolved?
Yes, thank you, Chair, for the question. The United States have been fairly clear that they are looking, obviously, for the outcome of the investigation, so data related to that. They are also looking for information around the recent detections, so things that we would call trace back and trace forward, looking for the history of that field and activity in those fields. They're looking for how we would delimit, so what we call delimitation surveys. They're looking at gap identification, key points, those kind of things. But they're also looking for the outcome of our National Potato Wort Survey, which had already been started prior to the fines. They're looking at any risk mitigation measures for what is down the road, ideally not quarantines. So if you separate what is quarantine and what is not, how we will manage the space that doesn't have a pest, so pest-free areas of production. And then fundamentally, they want to review their own potato wort pest risk assessment. And this is their own science work that they will do. We are trying to work with them on that. We have provided our own pest risk assessment that we recently updated to them. So these kind of things are the things that the United States is looking for in order for them to understand the nature of the problem from their perspective before we can, have the conversation about opening trade.
Thank you. I guess my next question, and if the representatives from the government of PEI want to step in, I just wanted to know a little bit more. When we have the outbreak of a pest in our crops, it suggests that the soil ecology is out of balance, and you have pests springing into abundance like potato wort. Can you walk the committee through what mitigation efforts are like in trying to combat this disease? What so far has shown success, et cetera?
In 25 seconds, please.
Yeah.
Carolyn, do you want to take that?
Certainly, thanks for the question. I guess I'd be cautious to use the word spring into abundance in terms of potato wort. It's a soil-borne fungus that isn't a sprinter or a marathon by any means, but it does like specific climate temperatures and irrigation. And I think we were, fortunate or misfortunate this summer to probably have some ideal situations which helped detect the pest.
Thank you, Ms. Sanford. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. We're going to go to our second round of questioning. 5 minutes, Mr. Epp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for your time today. As I listen to the testimony, it's becoming, I think, clear to me when I ask myself the question, what has changed? It seems to be the American confidence in our own system. I'm hearing from the witnesses that.
Mr. Chair, the interpreter has noted that the sound does not allow for interpretation. Perhaps we can move the microphone. I'm sorry, Mr. Epp.
There, I moved it a little bit higher. Does that make it a little bit easier on your ears? I apologize for that. Okay. So what appears to be changes the American confidence in our management plan and in our system. So my first question would be to the CFI, to Ms. Mathani. Will you table to the committee the agreement that you have with the Americans with APHIS as to what conditions will be required in order to resume trade?
Thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, we have provided information to our stakeholders as well as the province around our discussions with the United States APHIS, and so those conversations continue, and we have provided that information to all our stakeholders through the working groups that we have. There is a discussion prior to a meeting with APHIS, and then a readout following the meeting with APHIS. So that information is available. We can make it available to you.
So you have an agreement with APHIS on what the conditions will be?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We do not have an agreement. These are technical discussions as a result of the detection of the in October of the potato wart. So the discussions are scientific. This information sharing, there is following discussions, normally a letter that says that this is what we've discussed, this is what we are looking at. That information has been shared as a readout with industry and the provinces.
Right. So what I'm hearing is that this is the crux of the matter. This is the crux of that there is an agreement, that there is a dispute. So I would assume the officials would have gamed out the process by which to address this. By going to a voluntary ban, we've removed from ourselves any potential dispute resolution mechanisms, if I understand correctly, if we get to that point. So if may I ask, what is the present resolution process in place right now if we can't reach agreement with APHIS?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. I think it's important to understand that this was not a ban. This was based on the regulations and our plant protection regulation that says that if an importing country has concerns with our issue, with our product, based on the concerns that the U.S. had, that we are not authorized to issue export certificates. That was the rationale for why there was the suspension of the issuance of export certificates. We continue to speak with the USDA.
Thank you. I've asked for the things to be tabled. Could I ask that, has the CFI received any direction from either the minister or from the PMO's office as to go the compensation right rather than fight with the Americans at the border?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. The discussions that we are having with the USDA are scientific and technical discussions.
Yes, and so did you receive any direction from the Prime Minister's office or from the minister as to the route that you are to go to address this with the Americans?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. We have had no direction from anybody. These are technical discussions that we have with the USDA to try and resolve a scientific issue where there is a difference in the interpretation of the level of risk tolerance. From a CFIA perspective, with respect to table stock potatoes, we feel that the mitigation measures that have been put in place do give us a negligible risk. From a USDA APHIS perspective, this is not the same. So there is the difference in interpretation of scientific results or scientific argument.
Right, and so what's the mechanism for resolving that?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. The technical discussions continue. We are looking at what information APHIS requires in order for us to satisfy their requirements for table stock potatoes. This is a preoccupation for CFIA. This is something that we are working continuously and very hard on.
I could go shift to the Prince Edward Island government. Were you consulted in the development of this strategy to address this issue, or were you informed after the fact?
10 seconds, unfortunately, that's all we have, but over to you.
We have been in discussions since the first potato or the wart was found in the fall. I'm not sure we were involved in discussions of strategy, but we have been involved in some of the outcomes that could have taken place.
Thank you, Mr. Matheson. I'm going to turn to Mr. Turnbull. Thank you, Mr. Epp. Over to you, Mr. Turnbull, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I'll direct my questions to Ms. Mithani. Would you characterize this as a trade disagreement or a pest issue?
Thank you very much for the question. Mr. Chair, CFIA is a regulator. We have a mandate to protect the health of plants as we have with animals as well, which means that from my perspective, from the CFIA perspective, this is a pest issue. Our mandate is to ensure that we prevent the spread of potato wart across the country and internationally. We have found the detections. Our long-term management plan is in place so that we are able to detect very quickly and put measures in place, some mitigation measures, so that this continues to happen. PI has had a long history of producing the highest quality potatoes for Canadians and international consumers. The Government of Canada shares the pride of our PI producers. The fact is that the long-term management plan has really allowed PEI to move hundreds of potatoes across the country and internationally. So it is working.
Thank you. Yeah, and I know that other members have suggested in their line of questioning that perhaps that this risk management plan is not working. But isn't it true that you can have an instance of potato wart and still have an effective risk management plan, that there are soil and climatic conditions that are ever changing and difficult, I'm sure, to account for every possibility? It's this is akin to trying to predict the weather. Is it not?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. I would agree that your analogy around climate and how this happens is a good one. I would also say that these are conditions, these are plans, and that the long-term management plan is a plan that's evergreen. It provides the CFIA the opportunity to modify change as required. It is just the same with the ministerial order. A ministerial order can be modified, revoked, changed as required. So this has been the best way forward in terms of trying to protect the potato program across the country and to ensure that PEI potatoes can still go across the country and other places too. We continue to work with the US to try and come to resolution on the issue we are having right now.
Great. And has this happened before, Ms. Mithani? Have there been instances of potato wart that have affected trade relationships with the US?
Thank you very much for the question. Mr. Chair, in the year 2000, when we had the first detections of the potato wart, both table stock potatoes as well as seed potatoes we did not have access to the US market for 6 months. So this is not something that is unusual. It requires time, it requires information, it requires scientific investigation and data to support our position, which is exactly what we are doing right now.
Thank you. And did it happen in 2014 as well?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. I do not have the details at hand on the 2014, but I imagine it was the same. Maybe David Bailey can answer that question.
Yeah, the points of note are, as the president has said, is 2000, 2014 and 15, and 2020, and now 2021. Last year, there was a restriction for from the fall through to the spring of this year by the United States. And so you can see that the question of potato wart, each time that it comes up, the United States becomes more concerned and raises questions of confidence and risk mitigation, and their risk tolerance, for all intents and purposes, declines. Thank you.
Right. And I mean, it seems that instances of potato wart aren't necessarily corresponding to the government in power per se, but in fact are related to other factors, of course. And anyhow, I think the only other question that I had, Mr. Chair, was just around the role of producers in the province in terms of biosecurity practices, and that risk management plan, I'm sure, is a highly collaborative effort. We've heard a lot about CFIA's role in today's conversation, but I haven't heard a whole lot about the other partners in that relationship. If you could speak to that briefly, I'd be grateful.
Mr. Turnbull, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I know Mr. Matheson and Ms. Sanford certainly saw that question, so perhaps they'll get an opportunity to address that later. Maintenant, c'est Monsieur Perron.
Now, Mr. Perron for 2.5 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll return to Ms. Lapointe, perhaps, and perhaps I'll follow up on Mr. Turnbull's question. We've asked questions about the timeline, and you've said there isn't really one. You're negotiating with the United States. There's scientific exchanges. Could we explain to committee members and producers what the conditions would be for a resumption of trade? And is there a guarantee that the assessment of those conditions is not partial but scientific? You've said it's scientific, but you've said we can't see it. So that could raise questions for us. I would say there are two aspects. These discussions are technical and scientific in that regard. So all of the discussions are based on scientific guidance and a risk evaluation. The first aspect for us is to open the border to table stock potatoes. That is the urgent priority for the agency. The second aspect is longer-term work for seed potatoes. The United States would like to see the results of our investigation, the investigation on the last 2 detections with 11 farms, 348 parcels of land, and they want to see the results of our national investigation, which we will have concluded in January. And they also want to see if we're able to put in place a type of zoning on the island to identify the parcels, the farms that are at high risk, and to open parcels with minimal risk for potato wart. So they also want to do their own risk assessment, which according to them would take about 4 months. So there's a lot of work to be done. For our part, we're trying to accelerate the work and facilitate conversations and provide data as much as we can. Thank you. Mr. Perron, I'm sorry, but you only have 5 seconds left. It's a short amount of time. I'll just make a comment. With 2 months and 4 months, that's about 6 months. And the United States, well, what did we gain by closing the border ourselves? Thank you very much. Mr. McGregor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just interested in the theme of reciprocity. Back in 2006, the CFIA had to ban the import of potatoes from the state of Idaho because of potato cyst nematode. So in that case, the U.S. government or the state government did not act proactively. It fell to Canadian officials to put the ban in place. I'm just wondering, like since 2006, are there examples of the United States Department of Agriculture or any state-level governments acting proactively in the manner that we have in this current case, where they have proactively stopped the export of U.S. agricultural products to Canada? I'm just wondering, do they have a similar system in place where they've acted proactively, or has it always fallen upon our federal agency, the CFIA, to do that work for them and put a ban in place?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. I would like to go back to the fact that we did not put our ban on ourselves. We did not do it for ourselves. It was based on the regulatory requirement. As I've said, the plant protection regulation speaks to the fact that we can only issue an export certificate to an importing country if we meet their requirements. With the concerns that the US had, we were not meeting their requirements, and therefore we would not have been able to issue export certificates.
Yes, but to my question, I regard that. I think this is semantics. One way or another, there are no PEI potatoes going to the United States right now. Are there examples of the United States government acting proactively in the manner that we have since 2006, or has it fallen on the CFIA to identify those pests and put in place our own stops at the border to prevent US agricultural produce from coming into our country?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. Maybe David Bailey can speak to some of the other federal orders that may have been in place around 2006.
Yes, thank you, President, and thank you, Chair, for the question. I can't speak to the specifics of what another country may or may not have taken on
Mr.
board.
Bailey, Mr. McGregor, and I apologize because it's a really good question, and maybe I'll get the authority to ask it at the end, or perhaps Mr. McGregor, our next Conservative speaker. We do want to go to our third round of questions. We do have a limited amount of time, so I'm going to use my discretion and go to 4 minutes each for the Conservatives and Liberals. It looks like Mr. Barlow's unmuting. My apologies, Mr. McGregor.
Well, I guess to that, I'll kind of pick up on Alistair's question, if that's okay. He asked, about the ban, and Ms. Matheny said, well, we couldn't provide the export certificates because we didn't meet the requirements. Well, we have an agreement in place that's been in place since 2015. What requirements changed? If we have agreements in place with the United States, what requirements changed that all of a sudden we couldn't provide that export certificate?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. It was the detection of the 2021 that caused concern to the US regarding potato wart, and therefore it was based on that concern that we were not meeting their requirements, and therefore we were unable to issue export certificates based on that. That was the reason.
Okay, well, it seems to me if you have an agreement in place, you can't have one party change those requirements without having a discussion with both sets of the party. It sounds to me like the United States changed the game and we just capitulated. But and to part of that, New Brunswick asked CFIA to ban the import of potatoes from the United States because of ring rot, and the CFIA refused, saying the agreement we have in place is sufficient. So, why is this seems to be a one-way deal where Canada is not, is banning these things? Why is this is a one-way trade ban where, we don't do it when the United States has an issue with ring rot, but we're more than happy to do it when it's an issue with Canadian product. And that's why I find this frustrating. But to Mr. Matheson or to your colleague, Ms. Sanford, we've talked about these 33 different cases where potato wart has been identified in Canada. At any time has potato wart been traced back to its origins in PEI? If it's found in the United States, and why not?
To the best of my knowledge, it has never been found in the United States based on a case from PEI. And I would assume that's because the management plan is working and that things are working appropriately.
Thank you. And Ms. To CFIA again, I guess, the National Potato Council is claiming that there's been a 75% reduction in soil sampling. Is that the case? Has CFIA soil sampling been reduced that significantly? And if so, why? And if that is not the case, why isn't CFIA pushing back to debunk that misinformation that is continuing to be spread south of the border?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. That is misinformation, and I will ask David Bailey to explain. There are a number of factors that have to be considered in terms of how many soil samples are taken on a yearly basis. It really depends on the number of factors. As I said, soil samples are done based on a regulatory requirement. They can be done.
I don't, Ms. Matheny, again. I don't need the the detail of it, that is what the National Potato Board is saying in the media. Why is CFIA not pushing back on that misinformation then? Or maybe you are and we're just not seeing it.
Thank you very much for the question. And Mr. Chair, I would ask David Bailey to respond. We have pushed back. We have actually corrected those in the media as well. David, if you want to explain.
30 seconds.
Yeah, and so let's sum it up to bad math on the part of the American Potato Council. It is not something you can average. Soil sampling and the amounts taken in each year are as a factor of investigations, export samples, which are on demand by growers, National Potato Board survey in our current context, and other things. So the amount of soil samples fluctuates over a period of time, and you can't average them out, which is what the National Potato Council tried to do. And we have sent corrections for that to the various media outlets.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Mr. Morrissey, for 4 minutes to finish us off with the panel.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the President of CFIA. Clarification, there's been some confusion. On November the 21st, when the Canadian minister issued a statement that Canada would voluntarily suspend certificates across the border, was that the only measure taken at that time, or did the American government act at the same time? Ms. Mithani.
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. When the minister announced the voluntary suspension, it was a suspension based on the recommendations that we had given. There were no other changes, to my knowledge, that were done as a result of the U.S. And maybe David can speak to that. David?
What did the U.S. government order its border security to do? David or Ms. Mithani?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. The United States issued directions to its Customs and Border Patrol services to not accept shipments from PEI through any border point into the United States by midnight on November 22nd.
So if the minister's decision really had no impact on that, the U.S. decided to close its border on November the 22nd, am I correct?
That's correct. Whether we took some action or not, we would be sitting here having the same conversation today.
Well, thank you for explaining, because some people's been playing loose and fast with the fact that the minister simply moved arbitrarily and that she could, by changing her mind, the border would reopen. But it's important for the committee to understand the U.S. government closed the border at the same time. My question to Ms. Mithani is, over the past number of years, from 2000 to 2015, in all the incidents that occurred involving PEI potatoes, did CFIA follow the same science-based process to unresolve those disputes and open the market?
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. Absolutely. We have always used the management plan to continue to work to make sure that, we prevent and protect PEI potatoes and protect the spread of potato wart.
So the process you used that you're using today is the same as in all the incidents in the past. And suffice to say, CFIA does not take political direction on how to deal with science on these issues.
Thank you very much for the question. Absolutely, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Okay, it's important to do. The management plan that was put in place that we referred to, is it solely a CFIA document, or how's the management plan developed? Could you expand on that? Is it developed in concert with the government of PEI and with the potato producers, potato marketing board, or is it solely a CFIA document?
Thank you very much for the question. I will turn to David Bailey to answer the specifics.
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, when the long-term management plan was originally created just after the 2000 find, it was created in partnership with the PEI Potato Board as well as the province of PEI. And it is really a joint document from that perspective in its creation. It is simply a regulatory tool to help us collectively manage
so it's important,
fungus.
Mr. Bailey, it's important for this committee to understand this is not a document of CFIA, and in relation, the assumption would be that CFIA totally controls it. It is a management tool prepared by the industry CFIA and the government of PEI. Thank you. Ms. Matani, could you explain the difference with a federal order versus the ministerial one? Because if Minister Bibeau had not acted, what would be the implications of a federal order? And I will go to the province for a quick comment on that. Which would have had the most negative impact on the PEI potato industry? Ms. Matani first.
30 seconds. Ms. Matani, if you could be quick, and then we'll quickly go to Prince Edward Island if we could. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Chair. The difference between the federal order is once a federal order is up, it is very, very difficult.
The federal U.S. order.
Yes, federal U.S. order is very difficult to change. We looked in the past and there were no examples where a federal order had been lifted before. Therefore, that was the best thing at the time to do, was to have an order
so
that we had control over. So a federal order
from the U.S. would have had long-term negative consequences to the PEI potato industry. Am I correct in assuming that? Mr. Madison, could you comment briefly on what would have had, would the province had risked a federal order versus the CFIA voluntarily suspending?
I can't make comment on that. That's outside the
okay. That's understand.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. I did give you a little bit of extra time just so that we could allow Ms. Matheny. Thank you very much to all my colleagues, to the witnesses for your testimony. That ends panel one. So I would like to thank on behalf of the entire committee, thank you to the witnesses for taking the time tonight to be here with us. And I'll let you excuse yourself. Folks, we are gonna just be 2 or 3 minutes at most to pause before we get into our next panel. And we're gonna let the clerk take some sound checks. So we're gonna suspend momentarily, but please don't go far. Thanks. We have our second panel here today on behalf of the Department of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, Tom Rosser, I hope I'm saying that right, Tom, the Assistant Deputy Minister. And on behalf of the PEI Potato Board, we have the General Manager, Greg Donald. So welcome to you both. We have 5 minutes for opening remarks. We're running a little bit behind, but we're going to get started right away. To Mr. Rosser, 5 minutes, over to you.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the invitation to join you for this meeting this afternoon. And I'd like to congratulate you on your election as chair of this committee.
I want to thank the committee for holding this special meeting on the potato wart situation in Prince Edward Island and its impact on farm families, workers, and agribusinesses. As you heard earlier, the CFIA investigation continues as quickly as possible to give the U.S. the data they want so we can resume imports of fresh potatoes from PEI. Until that happens, the situation remains difficult and stressful for producers, for their families, and for those who work in the supply chain, from grading to packing, trucking, and so on. The potato industry is a significant economic driver on the island. The department has been working hard to determine how best to support producers in the industry and help relieve some of the significant financial pressures they're facing. Some support has already been made available to producers under our business risk management programs. The PEI and federal governments recently collaborated to amend the agri-stability program so that potato producers can enroll up to the December 31st, 2022 and receive interim payments of up to 75%. Farm Credit Canada has reached out to help producers with flexible payments and other options to relieve cash flow pressures. These measures help, but they are not enough. Yesterday, Minister Bibeau announced a federal investment of $28 million to help PEI potato farmers with the management of surplus potatoes. This funding will be used to support the diversion of surplus potatoes by redirecting the surplus to food banks and other food security organizations. It will help in facilitating increased sales to processors and supporting environmentally sound disposal of surplus potatoes. Funding will also support marketing activities to develop long-term strategies to manage future challenges. AFC officials will work with the PEI Potato Board, National Food Bank organizations, the province, and other stakeholder groups to deliver this funding. We will have more details to share very shortly in the coming days and weeks. We aim to get this urgent support to producers as soon as we possibly can. The funding is a first tranche of federal supports, while work continues to assess impact and find solutions for affected PEI farmers in collaboration with the provincial government. Meanwhile, we're pulling out all the stops to meet the U.S. technical requirements and get our message to our U.S. partners. It's science-based messaging that we are delivering, namely that the trade of fresh potatoes from PEI remains safe when appropriate risk mitigation measures are in place. Collaboration is key. We plan to take a Team Canada approach. We're working with the Potato Working Group made up of government and industry to keep us all on the same page and focused on our common goal. Yesterday, the minister also announced the appointment of Fred Gorell as the new co-chair of the Potato Working Group. Mr. Gorell is very well known within the sector and comes with years of experience as a former Assistant Deputy Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada and leader of our Market Access Secretariat. We are continuing our concerted effort to engage with our U.S. partners at all levels. Earlier this month, Deputy Minister Chris Forbes met with his counterpart in Washington, Deputy Secretary Brona. They discussed collaboration on restoring market access for PEI potatoes. The minister is in regular contact with Secretary Vilsack, and she met late last week with Ambassador Cohen. The Prime Minister has raised this issue with President Biden, Minister Ng with her counterpart in Washington, and many members of Congress. And there are many other high-level engagements with senior U.S. officials. So we're doing what we can to keep up the pressure, but I know none of this can happen fast enough for producers. Resolving the trade issue with the U.S. is the minister's top priority and will remain so. Everyone is fully engaged and focused on resolving this difficult situation as quickly as we possibly can. Thank you for your attention, Mr. Chair. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Rosser. Et maintenant, Monsieur...
Thank you, Mr. Ross. And Mr. Donald now.
Thank you very much, Minister Chair and the members of this committee for inviting me to speak today regarding the current crisis that Prince Edward Island potato industry is facing. I know other speakers have talked about the fungus. It's a disease that we've been dealing with very well for the last almost 21 years here in PEI. And as it's been mentioned, the long-term domestic potato wart management plan has served us well to prevent the spread of potato wart, as well as to manage any future detections in order to avoid a repeat of the pain of 2000. So the plan has worked. As I said, this year, as it was discussed, wart was found in 2 processing fields that were already under restrictions by CFA because of previous fines. And when we heard of them this year, we were concerned, but our immediate reaction was the plan has worked exactly the way that it's supposed to. And having said that, the tone of the communications from CFIA this time had changed. And as we listened to the change in tone on the part of CFIA, our organization responded by reminding CFIA of the very solid third-party visual data that would provide additional evidence that the rest of PEI was not infected with potato wart. CFIA did not acknowledge that data and chose to focus only on soil sampling. We learned from other countries that have potato wart but still export all over the world, the Netherlands being one such example, that visual data plays a huge role in the management of this disease. We understand that USDA threatened to close the border to all Canadian seed potatoes. To prevent that loss of trade, particularly for Western Canada, CFIA suspended the shipment of PEI seed potatoes to the US. CFIA also promised the US that it would also find a way to suspend the shipment of PEI seed potatoes to the rest of Canada. CFIA's easiest way of doing this was a ministerial order. And to justify this, it used the words that the entire province of PEI is infested with potato wart. The U.S. then turned around and used this against us, and we're where we are, a complete ban on the shipment of all PEI potatoes to the United States. CFIA says the risk from shipping washed, sprout, inhibited potatoes from non-restricted PEI fields is extremely low, and indeed we are shipping potatoes across Canada to offshore markets based on those internationally accepted risk mitigation measures. The U.S. is apparently not accepting those measures, even though it is a basis for how they ship potatoes around the world, and including Japan and into Canada. There are regulated or quarantined potato pests in 16 different U.S. states, and potatoes from those states enter Canada based on those mitigation measures. We talk about equivalency and phytosanitary measures, but that is not the case in PEI this year. We asked for $60 million diversion program to destroy potatoes that will not be able to move to market because of the U.S. ban and the ministerial order. Yesterday, Minister Bibeau announced $28 million for that, and local media said it was the first phase of financial assistance for our farmers. Today, we learned that the funding will not cover any of the costs or value of the potatoes. It is intended only to cover the cost of hauling the potatoes out of storage and running them through snowblowers. We were shocked. We asked for 12 cents per pound to establish a floor price for the Canadian market, but now AFC has effectively established a floor price of 4 cents per pound. We have spoken with AFC and the Minister's office about this today, and we're hopeful that they will revisit this crippling decision. It is yet another blow to our farmers, and they deserve none of this. It will also mean much lower prices for potatoes grown in every province for the rest of the winter. So a few key questions, and I'm just about to wrap up. Does the CFIA have confidence in our wart management plan or not? If it does, it should communicate that more forcefully to the United States. The export of washed and sprout inhibited fresh potatoes has worked smoothly for the last 20 years. As a result of this plan, what has changed? Potato wart has not spread to other provinces or countries from Prince Edward Island, and just completed a national survey by CFIA resulted in no potato wart detections in any other province in Canada. That's great news, and it's further confirmation of the strength of the wart management plan. And I'm just going to add, the potato industry on PEI is willing to work with CFIA to provide additional safeguards or insurances to the U.S. to reopen the border. And the same goes, we know, for our provincial government, which has had our backs since this started. We have made suggestions, as has the provincial government, but we don't know if those offers have been shared with the U.S. So I'll just wrap up. In my career working in the potato industry, this is the largest crisis we have yet faced. The stress on our farmers and packers is immense. Not only are farmers trying to figure out what to do with potatoes they can't sell this winter, but they are trying to figure out whether to plant potatoes next year. Unless there's immediate progress made, I'm afraid that a number of our family farms will exit the industry, and that irreparable damage will be done to our industry and the Prince Edward Island economy. We appreciate the committee looking into this situation. In our minds, it is not just another trade irritant with our biggest trading partner. It is one that can be resolved if the will is there. The U.S. is short of potatoes, and buyers in the U.S. want our potatoes.
Mr. Donald, I don't mean to interrupt but you are at time, and we want to stay on time, and I know you'll have the opportunity to answer questions. So we're going to start with our panel. 6 minutes. I believe Mr. Barlow, it looks like you might be moving. Yeah, Mr. Barlow, 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Mr. Donald, for being here, and certainly, Mr. Rosser, good to see you again. Mr. Rosser, I'll start with you. Certainly nobody wants this to be a long, drawn-out process, and we're supposed to have dispute resolution provisions within CUSMA. So I'm curious, does the minister's suspension of certification prevent Canada from utilizing the dispute settlement mechanism that is in CUSMA?
I would say that both the committee that we have established, the working group, is looking at all options. We have trade experts there. We can certainly looking at this from a trade angle as well as a plant health one.
Okay, that is a bit disconcerting that this isn't ironclad yes or no at this point, and this wasn't discussed. And nothing, no disrespect to you, Mr. Rosser, but I would hope this would be an ironclad yes or no before this decision to suspend the certification was decided upon. In 2000, when we had potato wart first detected, we did use the dispute resolution under NAFTA. So if we've used this before and we fought to keep this dispute resolution in CUSMA, why are we not using it?
Well, we certainly haven't given up the ability to use it. It is an option among others. The one thing that is certain about the CUSMA and WTO processes is they are not quick, that they extend over a period of a year or more. It remains an option. We are in active discussion with the industry in the province about what available options are. What's known about that one, like I said, is it will not bring resolution nearly as quickly as we would like to the situation.
Well, we're already hearing, Mr. Rosser, that this from CFIA, that this could be prolonged well into 2023. So we're not just talking about this year's harvest, but we could potentially be talking about next year's harvest. And I would hope all tools are being used to ensure that this is resolved as quickly as possible. Mr. Donald, to you, certainly in your presentation, I would say it's fair to think that you see this more as a political mistake in terms of maybe CFIA communication, and maybe we're played a little bit here, then this is a decision that was based on sound science.
Yeah, I would agree with that comment. I believe it started out with the detection, but the way it was communicated kind of created the opportunity for it to become more than a scientific conversation.
Was before this export certification ban was placed, and you heard the semantics around that. This is a ban. Prior to that being enacted, was there any consultation from the government with yourself and the Potato Board in terms of what actions we're going to be taking and what the ramifications of those actions would be?
Just so I'm clear, are you referencing since this year's detections? Yeah,
sorry. So when the export ban was put on earlier this year, before the minister made that announcement, was the Potato Board and PEI consulted in terms of the actions the current government was going to take?
No, we were not.
We've now heard publicly that the CFIA is saying this could be prolonged into 2023, as I said. What kind of impact could this have on the PEI potato industry, but more specifically the farmers themselves and the farm families who are being impacted by this?
Yeah, and if on the last question you asked, Mr. Barlow, I just want to answer. We were informed of, I'll say, as I said in here, some of the wishes or interests or threats, I'll say, from the U.S. Relative, based on what they want, but it wasn't discussed with us what those actions that were put in place. And I'm sorry, I still think about that. What was your question?
That's okay. Yeah. Maybe I've got a limited amount of time. If I have time for that, I'll go back.
Sorry for that.
No, that's okay. Can I just get clarification? So that $28 million that Minister Bibeau announced, so not a single dime of that is going to the farmers themselves. This is merely a fund to destroy product. Did I hear you correctly?
Our understanding today is that it is to destroy the destruction costs to remove the potatoes in the warehouses, put them in the field, and put them through snow blowers. And, so this is a portion of the 28 million. Is 21 million.
Okay, so this is not a compensation package for the producers in any way. They're still looking at you to access agri-stability as your management plan. Would you look at agri-stability as a product that was ever designed for a catastrophe like this? Is this what agri-stability is there for?
I can't answer that, but what I am hearing from my producers is, for example, if a producer has a year end in July, it'll be this time next year before they'll know the impact of this situation on their financial situation. So I don't believe they need assistance. First and foremost, we want the border open. They don't want assistance, but if it's required, they're going to need something relatively quickly. And I don't think Ag Stability has the ability, from what I understand of it, to do that.
What is the reaction from growers to hear that this is going to maybe last until 2023 before this?
Mr. Barlow, I apologize. We're at 6 minutes. Mr. Donald, perhaps you can table that and answer it in one of your future questions. I'm going to go to Mr. McDonald for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Chair.
Mr. McDonald, over to you. If you're still on mute, I believe, sir.
How's that?
You'll get the hang of it. You're a new guy. All right, over to you.
A couple questions for Mr. Bailey, and just in regards, we've talked a lot about soil testing, and soil testing coming out of the U.S. and every article you read, every podcast you listen to relevant to potatoes.
Mr. McDonald, I'm just going to interrupt you. Mr. Bailey was part of the last panel. So we now have Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and we have Mr. Donald.
All right, so I'll ask anybody from Agri-Food Canada. Why is there such a particular emphasis put on soil testing, like with the other mitigation that is being done on Prince Edward Island? Or are you aware of the other mitigation?
Mr. Chair, I'm afraid that I don't feel in a position to answer that question. Maybe I could propose that I'm sure my colleagues from CFA or with the committee earlier could get back to the member or to the committee in written form. But I'm afraid I don't think I can help on that one.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Donald, quickly, could you tell us for the record what other mitigation sources that Prince Edward Island farmers do?
Oh, there would be many sources of mitigation in terms of preventing the spread of the disease. In particular, you're referring to? Yeah. So there'd be biosecurity measures, which would be cleaning and disinfectant between fields is one of the best management practices. Would be one of the key ones, but there's also all kinds of observations. 87% of our crop is crop insurance, and they take samples. I think a 60-pound sample every 10 acres. All of our potatoes that go to Cavendish Farms, which is half the crop, they take 2 25-pound baskets for every tandem truckload, which is I think about 85,000 truckloads a year. So and I could go on and on. There's many ways that the crop things are done to prevent best biosecurity practices, but also to observe whether or not the disease is present. In all those observation ways, they've never seen potato wart, for example.
Thank you, Mr. Donald.
So through observation.
Yeah. I want to quickly go back to an issue that was raised. Obviously, the U.S. has several pests subject to quarantine throughout several states. The nematode pest, and basically they use the same marketing policies as we do to export into Canada as Canada exports into there. I'm wondering, has this been raised in any of the discussions relevant to CFIA, or if there's anybody on here that can tell me that that trade issue has been a discussion or a flag raised, that there could be possibilities of Canada doing the same thing, maybe to the U.S. in regards to the Idaho potatoes or those pests that are so high in quarantine?
Mr. Chair, if I might, I can maybe try to take a stab at that. Greg may well wish to add. It's certainly, we've, as I mentioned earlier, we have created a working group with the province and the industry and the full value chain represented there. Part of what we discussed there are trade measures, trade options as part of the menu of things that we can consider to, as part of a way forward on this. So we do have a forum where we can talk with those most affected by this as to what various options are for us to try and move this issue forward with the United States.
So I'm hearing that there was a discussion relevant to that with the US, or is that internally within Canada?
We've created a forum in Canada to talk about what our options are for addressing this, from in terms of plant health, in terms of supporting producers affected by this, in terms of trade levers, trade measures that are available to us.
Thank you. I guess, in a final comment, Mr. Chair, this is a very serious and drastic situation island farmers and producers on Prince Edward Island are being held to. And I just want to stress the sense of urgency that's required to resolve, to come to a resolution. And communication is key to this. And I'm certainly fearful over the past little while that communication is certainly something that has been lacking in some regards, in some essences. I want to know if anybody's on here that can tell me the role of Mr. Gorel is going to play in his presence in this whole situation.
Mr. Chair, perhaps I can try, although Greg Donald will be Fred's co-chair, so he may have a perspective on it as well. But Fred will be an interlocutor with the sector, as somebody who knows the trade world, who knows Canada-U.S. relations, understands the industry. We've created this forum, this working group that he will chair that brings the relevant players to the table. I think a big part of his role will be to make sure that communications back and forth are as clear as possible between interested parties in Canada, and there are no and try to minimize any misunderstandings or miscommunication.
And
Thank you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I could add, Mr. McDonald, yeah, we're pleased with the announcement that Mr. Gorel will be joining the effort. And today was our first working group meeting. And as Tom said, he did co-chair that meeting. And we hope that he'll take an active role in the discussions between USDA and CFIA and in that exercise. Thank you.
Thank you. That's fine, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Maintenant, Monsieur.
Now, Mr. Perron, 6 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for being with us this afternoon for this important meeting. Mr. Rosser, I'll begin with you. Given the answers we had during the first panel earlier, they talked about the American requirements. We were wondering if there was a timeline for the resumption of trade of PEI potatoes sent to the U.S. There isn't a timeline because there are very demanding requirements, and those requirements seem to have increased since 2015, despite the fact that the techniques we have to control the disease, the techniques to clean the product and not spread it, are still working in Canada today. So it seems to me that this is disguised protectionism from our American neighbor. And it could make us think of softwood lumber and electric vehicles, and I fear that they want to extend that. Do we have a plan if there's no agreement within a few months? Earlier, we talked about a study that would be conducted by the United States that would take 4 months. Are you aware of that? Do we have a plan B if there's no agreement with the United States? What do we do for our producers who need support?
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank the committee member for the question. I would say yes. My colleagues at the agency described the situation with the Americans. It's true that the research plan being discussed will take some time. We will do everything we can to accelerate it. But it's important to remember that the situation is not static. As mentioned by Sylvie Lapointe, during the first panel, we believe there is the possibility that for fresh potatoes, there may be a reopening of the American market. From our point of view, the science can justify interprovincial trade of potatoes. We hope the Americans will be open to that ahead of all of the scientific work being complete. With PEI, we continue to have discussions with Puerto Rico. Is there opportunity there? So yes. It will take a rather long period of time to resolve this, but it doesn't mean that things will stay exactly as they are at the moment for the whole period it will take to complete the scientific research. Thank you, Mr. Rosser. I understand we have a neighbor who may not be acting completely in good faith. In any case, for seed potatoes, that could take some time, from what I've understood from your comments. So what will you do to help potato producers in PEI specifically? Because we talked about agri-stability earlier. A witness said it might not be the best for this scenario. During COVID, we've often been told there are programs, but the programs can be slow. So what do we have for producers? It's true we have agri-stability. It may be part of the solution. It's a layer of protection for producers who are hardest hit by the situation. 80% of producers in PEI are registered. But we know more is needed in this situation, and that is why the minister announced $28 million yesterday above risk management programs. That would be to destroy the crop. Is that correct? Not only that, yes, it can be used for that, but it can also be used to purchase potatoes to help food banks, for example, to help food banks purchase potatoes, to help processors use more potatoes from PEI. So we'll be having a discussion with the industry and with the province to determine their priorities to use that funding. Thank you. Mr. Donald, the amount that was announced, to you, is that enough or is much more needed? Do you have an estimate of the losses? What are the needs of PEI producers, Mr. Donald?
Thank you for the question. Our estimates, and that were communicated a few weeks ago, and again in detail a week ago, are $60 million. Are the needs of our producers.
Okay,
is that above the $28 million announced yesterday?
And that's not including the $28 million that was announced yesterday.
Donc, en surplus de ça, on aurait...
So in addition to that, we would need another amount. Do you have the impression, as I do, that this is disguised protectionism from a commercial trading partner that cheats increasingly?
Yeah, and just a clarification on the 60 million. So it would be $60 million in total is what we requested. Yeah. So and the funding announced yesterday would provide up to 21 that could go directly to the producers, and waiting. Yeah.
Désolé, Monsieur.
I'm sorry, Mr. Donald and Mr. Perron. That's it for the time. Mr. McGregor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Donald, maybe I'll start with you, and first of all, thank you for joining our committee today and providing your perspective, and also speaking on behalf of all of your members and the trials and tribulations they're currently going through. You had mentioned, I think, in your opening statement about other countries which had managed to successfully continue exporting potatoes despite the detection of potato warts. I think you may have mentioned the Netherlands Do you have any further information on that? Can you expand a little bit more on that? Because I'm curious as to how they were able to do that, whereas we seem to be dropping the full hammer on this problem.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, Netherlands is the world's leader in the exportation of seed potatoes. And that region, Northwestern Europe, has had potato wart, I believe, since the early 1900s. So they've been managing the disease through identification of pest-free areas, as has been done similarly on PEI, and other management techniques, including resistant varieties, et cetera. So it's something that's been there for a long time, and they continue to export potatoes around the world. And the number one way to mitigate it is through visual observations.
So visual observations, and when you compare the regime that they have in place for tracing potatoes, their origin, and you say they're able to sort of compartmentalize different regions. So if there's an outbreak, they can quickly act upon that. How does that compare with what our provinces are doing? And in Prince Edward Island's example.
Yeah. So up until this year, fields that were associated with a detection were considered restricted fields, and all other fields were considered pest-free. I don't know why to this day, this year, CFA made a change in their protocol or their own plan that they've considered PEI to no longer be pest-free. And that started by impacting our export business, then the way it's communicated to Canada and the US, and that was predisposed us to the issue that we're dealing with right now with the US.
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher that an entire province's export is being affected by what was located on a couple of farms. Mm-hmm. I mean, like in your conversations with U.S. counterparts, is there any sympathy on that side to, or acceptance that we've got proper management techniques in place so that it wouldn't negatively affect an entire province's exports?
You'd have to be more specific to who in the U.S.
Yeah, I guess for U.S. government officials or on their related potato industrial boards and so on.
Yeah, because the most of the people we've talked to in the industry, which has kind of made this very hard to understand for us, want our potatoes. In a lot of cases, early days they weren't even aware of it. Most of the pressure was coming from the National Potato Council, I believe, and directly to USDA. So that's where the concerns were.
Thank you. Mr. Rosser, you've been listening to our back and forth here. So I guess, and I understand completely, and with respect that this may be a question that CFIA is more able to answer. But I mean, can you illuminate to us as to why an entire province's export industry is being affected when the wart was only discovered in a few select farms? I mean, and going forward, can we not learn a lesson from this where we can work with our American counterparts to establish a better management plan where if a disease is detected, we can quickly isolate it, lock mm-hmm. those farms down, but not have the entire province suffer as a result. So Mr. Rosser, if you have any comments on this line of questioning, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Mr. Chozo, I mean, for a more technical reply, my colleagues from CFI would probably be better placed, but I would offer a couple of thoughts, maybe just drawing on their earlier testimony. One of them being that this measure was taken because the U.S. authorities made it abundantly clear that if we didn't take measures to restrict exports from Prince Edward Island, they would do it for us. And we deemed it advantageous that the decision to put them on or remove them remain in Canadian hands. With respect to U.S. stakeholders, very active dialogue at all levels with the U.S. government. My recollection is Secretary Vilsack has expressed sympathy, understanding of the situation that this creates in Prince Edward Island. I would note as well that beyond the Canadian Embassy in Washington, that our network of consulates across the United States have been enlisted in this to help identify those stakeholders in the U.S. industry that could potentially serve as allies in our engagement with the United States on this. Lastly, I just say that I know colleagues from CFIA have had discussions with their counterparts from the Netherlands and other countries, so we can learn from the experience of others. We have been very focused on the immediate response to the current situation in recent weeks, but we are also thinking about the longer term and doing some outreach to learn from the experience of others in managing situations like this.
Thank you. I'll leave it there, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. And we're going to go back to the 5-minute slot. The Conservative Party, I don't know, Mr. Epp, it looks like.
Yes, I'll begin, and then I'm going to split my time with my colleague, Mr. Calkins. So I'm a bit confused. I'm going to go back to an answer previously from Mr. Rosser. There's nothing that precludes an agreement with the U.S. coming to terms at any point. But do we or do we not have access to the CUSMA dispute resolution mechanisms as a fail-safe? Back in 2000, we settled this dispute without a management plan in 6 months. And so do we or do we not have access?
Yes, I mean, we have the Americans do have obligations in their use of phytosanitary measures, and we are certainly bringing that perspective to dialogue around a way forward.
Okay. I'd like to take it over to the implications to the market if we have a longer term protracted dispute, if we don't use that mechanism efficiently. 2023, what was the purpose of putting the date out that this could last till 2023?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if that's a question for me, but and again, it's more based on dialogue with the United States and some of the scientific measures that the scientific work that they have requested. That is an estimate of how long it will take to undertake the various measures that they've outlined. So I tried to explain in an earlier testimony, it does not necessarily mean that the current export measures will remain frozen in place exactly as they are for that entire period. But that was an estimate of how long it would likely take to complete the work that the Americans have requested of us.
So what I'm trying to determine, is this a scientific dispute or a trade dispute? If it's a trade dispute, we have dispute resolution mechanisms. If we're till 2023, that's another season lost. Someone's going to fill that American market. We've lost that market, or a large part of it, to our Canadian producers. That affects the potato producers in my riding. What would you say to that with a 4-cent floor that my producers here, or the producers now in Western Canada, are expecting for this year's crop, with the opportunity not of having PEI exporting to the U.S. in 2022?
Mr. Chair, I'd simply say that there is no 4-cent floor. We are hopeful that we may see a speedy resolution to in terms of PEI's access for at least some products into the U.S. market. It's very common in the agriculture world that phytosanitary and scientific issues get intertwined with trade ones. I can assure the committee that we are looking at our circumstances in this situation through both prisms to inform a way forward.
Thank you. I'll turn over my time to Mr. Calkins.
Thank you, Mr. Epp. My question, Mr. Rosser, is this: you brought up in your answer to previous questions the notion of exploring all options available to us, including trade levers. Those were your words. You used those words, and the president of the CFIA maintained throughout the entirety of her testimony that this is simply a scientific and technical discussion between American and Canadian representatives at that level. So what is it actually? The government of Canada's response seems to be different depending on the department. Do you actually, if you're considering trade levers, then it's obviously a political economic dispute. And at what point are we going to recognize this for exactly what it is? This is protectionism from the protectionist government of the United States using a non-tariff barrier through this regulatory framework, which they can do from time to time, which they have done from time to time, which they haven't done every time, because every time we've detected potato wart, this has not been a problem. The tone has changed. So when is our tone going to change in response?
Mr. Chair, I just say that Dr. Mathany, her mandate, her agency's mandate is to look at this as a scientific and plant health issue, and that's the perspective that they bring to it. On the working group that Greg Donald and Fred Gorell co-chair, CFIA is represented, as are the trade experts at Global Affairs and in Agriculture Canada. So our objective is to bring all perspectives to it. Certainly, if we can, see resolution, see progress made on this, and on a scientific level, on a plant health level, that offers, I think, our greatest possibility at speedy resolution to this. But it's not the only prism through which we as a government are examining this issue.
I assume I have some time left, Mr. Chair.
You have 7 seconds, unfortunately, Mr. Calkin. But
well, I would like a long, protracted conversation with Mr. Donald if I get the opportunity.
Well,
I'd welcome that.
We're going to go to Mrs. Valdez. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to tell the committee that I'm sharing my time with the MP for Kitchener-Conestoga. So my question today is for Mr. Rosser. Who has the authority to stop production on a specific farm? And the second question is, what is the role of the province in managing the pest?
Mr. Chair, again, in terms of a legal and technical response, my colleagues from CFIA might be better placed to offer a more detailed answer than I. I would say, though, that in managing this, that there is very close collaboration, daily collaboration between the relevant officials at the CFIA and the province. But in terms of the legal details of who's responsible for what and who can order what on a farm, I would suggest that the committee address those questions perhaps in writing to the participants in the previous panel.
And just a second question. So I know you had mentioned in your opening statement, just to truly clarify. So you mentioned the 28 million announcement will be used to assist in funding to direct to the food bank and security organizations, as opposed to the fund is not just there to destroy potato product. Can you confirm that?
That is correct, Mr. Chair, that it is for many uses. It can be used to help with destruction, but our first priority, and I believe that priority is shared by the industry in the province, these are good quality potatoes, and to make a use of them productively wherever possible, be it food banks, be it for export, be it for further processing or other potential uses.
Thank you. I'll pass it over to the MP for Kitchener-Conestoga. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank both the panelists. Maybe just to continue that conversation that was asked, that we know that potato wart's a serious agricultural pest, but it's not a threat to human health. So if you don't mind expanding, just in the short time we have, on some of the creative solutions that will not only support our farmers in the destruction of this winter of the potatoes, but also to help make the best of this difficult situation in a collaborative way with food banks and other means of diverting potatoes to people who need them.
Mr. Chair, perhaps I could try an initial answer, and Greg Donald may well have a perspective as well. But we do have some experience as a department with food surpluses that built up during the COVID episode as a result of the partial closure of the hotel and restaurant sector, with helping food security organizations procure that food and make use of it. We are using that network and some of the lessons learned from that experience to see if we can't make a portion of this surplus available to food security organizations across Canada and potentially elsewhere as well. We've looking at an active discussion with potato processors, not just in PEI or Atlantic Canada, but other regions of the country, as to whether there might be a possibility for them to make greater use of the surplus. We're open to other possibilities, be it animal feed, biofuel feedstock, recognizing that not all of those solutions are going to yield great. Help us tremendously in terms of dealing with the surplus at hand, but we're exploring all possibilities that we can identify.
Perfect, thank you. If I can continue questioning Mr. Rossa there, you mentioned the Team Canada approach that we're taking, and that a working group has been formed, bringing relevant players to the table. to decide what measures are available. You've mentioned some of the organizations, but can you share with this committee some of the organizations that are at the table and what perspective they bring to our discussion?
Yeah, again, Greg Donald is a co-chair. Maybe we'll have a perspective on it, but there is a representative. In fact, Dr. Sanford, who was part of the earlier panel, is a member of that committee. Greg Donald co-chairs it. A number of representatives of PI Potato Board are also present on it. There are representatives of some of the major processing organizations. Department of Global Affairs, Food Inspection Agency, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. Off the top of my head, those are the where the members are drawn from, but perhaps Greg might have something to add.
30 seconds, Mr. Donald.
Yeah, no, I think you've pretty much covered all the people that are attending it. I just want to say that our farmers do not want to dump and waste potatoes. We have been shipping loads of potatoes to British Columbia, right across the country, and we'll continue to do that. Farmers do not want to destroy good food. These potatoes, the 4 cents, that works out to at a yield of 340 hundredweight breaker, $1,360. It costs $3,600 an acre to grow those potatoes. So,
Mr. Donald, my apologies for we have to keep moving. Mr. Parent pour 2 minutes demi.
Mr. Perron for 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll continue in that vein, Mr. Donald, on the diversification. It's very sad to see the waste of equality product. Have we started looking at diversification for export markets? Do you have avenues in that regard?
We had about 21 countries that we exported, but the way this has been handled and communicated by CFA, we have lost a number of those markets. I don't know where we can go internationally to get more markets. And this is about 10,000 truckloads of potatoes. It's a massive pile. And the time is their perishable product. They'll only keep for another month. We're talking weeks. We have to start, which we don't want to do, is destroying potatoes. There is not time. Time has ran out. I just can't stress that enough. This needs to be dealt with right away. We need to have that border open.
Désolé de vous interrompre.
Sorry to interrupt you. 2.5 minutes is short. You mentioned at the beginning that the way it was announced by the CFIA, if you had a constructive comment to make for things in the future, if something like this happens in 5 or 10 years, what changes would you ask for in their approach?
That if they have confidence in their own plan and the plan that they have agreement with the U.S., and the plan will work exactly the way it's supposed to, so they would project confidence that they have this, that they got this, and that's what changed the most this year. That didn't happen.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have the impression, as I do, that often we fear the United States a little too much?
Yes, our potatoes are perfectly good. And I just want to give an example. We talk about sprout inhibition. The U.S. exports, I think, upwards of $220 million worth of fresh potatoes to Japan. And Idaho, as pointed out earlier in presentations, has a quarantinable pest. The same mitigation measures of washing and sprout inhibition are good for that market. How come they're not good for our own, for our potatoes from Prince Edward Island? And if it's good in our own country, how come it's not good for our potatoes going to the U.S.?
Merci, Monsieur Donald.
Thank you, Mr. Donald. Thank you, Mr. Perron. Now, Mr. McGregor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rosser, maybe I'll start with you. I wanted to know a little bit more about the ways we proactively deal with disease and pests. So are you able to provide the committee with a little bit of an overview of what AAFC devotes in its budget to, mitigation measures for pests like potato wart? Where is the major source of research going on? Like, is it, the centers in Atlantic Canada? I'd just like to have a little bit of an overview of what the proactive steps are being done and if we're close to any kinds of breakthroughs in managing this disease.
Mr. Chair, thanks for the question. Yes, we do have I think going back to the 1950s, a history of working on specifically on potato wort. I think, as I understand it, our centers of expertise have traditionally been in at our center is Newfoundland, where they've been dealing with potato wort, I think, since the early 20th century. I understand that we have researchers elsewhere in the Atlantic region also doing research on resistant varieties and other things. Beyond the science work that we do on potato wort and other pests, we of course have a market access secretariat where we try to deal, like in an international and a trade context, with with facilitating the export of Canadian produced products. So we do come at this from different angles, but yes, we do have a critical mass of scientific expertise that for decades, I guess, has been conducting research related to potato wort.
Thank you, Mr. Rosser. And then Mr. Donald, I only have about 30 seconds left here. I understand, PEI potato farmers, they get their greatest source of income over the next few months from the exports. And if you just wanted to take a few more seconds to talk about, the financial situation they're in. And, you did mention that a lot of farms may not be able to make it through this year. So if you just wanted to add any further comments to that regard.
Yeah, I live here, I work for these folks, and it's dire, like through our whole communities. The question was asked earlier about 2023, and I didn't answer that. That's unacceptable. They don't know what to do. We have warehouses full of potatoes right now, what to do with those potatoes, let alone going into next spring. What do they plant? And I hear of farmers that
Mr. Donald, I apologize. We're already over time. I've got 10 minutes left. This is an important conversation. I'm going to move that we get 10 more minutes of conversation in. So we're going to go to 5 minutes to the Conservatives and then 5 minutes back to the Liberals. Mr. Barlow.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Donald. Maybe just finish that up really quick, if you don't mind, your thoughts there.
Yeah, I was just saying that folks are contemplating whether to continue or not. They may not be able to financially, but some are then deciding, I can't. It's hard farming as it is, the weather and all the uncertainties. But this is a government-made issue, and that's just unacceptable how this happened and where we're at. So a lot of them are thinking about getting out of the business and if they aren't forced out. So we're going to lose farms over this for sure.
Certainly and I appreciate Ms. Valdez's question about, more specifics on the $28 million, that's not all the disposed product. It is going to be transported to food banks, but ironically, it's going to be many of those Prince Edward Island farmers who are going to be accessing those food banks, getting their product back because they've had no revenue and no way to make a living, which I find extremely depressing. But maybe to Mr. Rosser, is there any plans, other than agri-stability or asking producers to drain their agri-invest account in terms of a possible compensation package? Is that being discussed? And again, I reiterate, I know producers would much rather be exporting their product than relying on compensation. But as Mr. Donald said, this is a perishable product and time is running short. Is the minister looking at some sort of compensation package, and what would that look like?
Mr. Chair, I would say that we have a number of programs in place. That the $8 million yesterday was intended as support to deal with the situation, primarily with the surplus. We will discuss with Mr. Donald and his organization, negotiate the details and parameters of how that will be operationalized, but would hope that would if not provide compensation, then at least provide some support in addressing the surplus that the many producers have of potatoes at the moment. We will also continue the discussion as events unfold, and new challenges arise. We're willing to work with the province and the industry for as long as it takes to help see through this situation.
I guess, what date did the minister informed of this justification or this threat from the United States, and who gave the minister the advice to put in the ministerial order to ban, for all semantics aside, to ban our PEI potato exports.
So, Chair, I'd say I believe in her testimony, Dr. Mathani confirmed that the minister was acting on the advice of the agency. I would say that the final decision, followed weeks of detailed, often daily discussions at various levels with the province, with industry stakeholders, with the United States. It was not something that was done quickly or casually. There was roughly from the second detection, which I believe is the 15th of October, until the order was put in place on, I believe it was the 22nd of November, there was very regular and intensive discussions with the province and others concerned before a final decision was taken.
How come the ministry, we've had the Minister Ng go to Washington, we've had the Prince Edward Island government along with representatives of the Potato Board go to Washington. How come the minister herself hasn't gone down to Washington to plead our case here or have those discussions?
Mr. Chair, I just note that the minister has spoken, I believe, on at least 3 occasions with Secretary Vilsack about the situation. This is a multi-pronged approach. I have little doubt that Minister Bibeau would travel to Washington on very short notice if she was advised that would be the most advantageous thing for a Canadian advocacy strategy for her to do. She has been very actively engaged on it. And I'm sure will at some point make personal representations in the U.S., but has to this point engaged through telephone conversations with the Secretary.
Mr. Donald, as Mr. Rosser said, that the minister received recommendation from CFIA with weeks of consultation. Was the Potato Board consulted on this decision to ban our exports, or did you agree with this decision if you were consulted?
15 seconds.
No, we had a series of updates, very little engagement until just the last week or two. And we were informed of the decision when it was made.
Thank you, Mr. Donald. Thank you, Mr. Barlow. We're going to finish up our panel with Mr. Morrissey for 5 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. My question to Mr. Rossiter, going back to the 28 million, this is on top of $10 million that's been announced by the government of Prince Edward Island, correct?
Mr. Chair, that's correct, yes.
And you, in your opening statements, you said this is to use your words, this is the first tranche of federal support. Did I correctly interpret you?
I believe that is what I said, and that is correct. That we are our focus now is to make the best use possible.
Okay,
of those
so
funds.
at the present time, then there's $38 million on the table, and it's been identified preliminarily of a $60 million. It could become a $60 million issue, but there's $38 million currently available to producers. It's important to know that this is to producers. My question, I want to go to Mr. Donald briefly, because an earlier question from one of the committee members, you referenced about Netherlands and the protocols that are put in place in the Netherlands who ship all over the world. Does the Netherlands, as part of their risk management tool, take potato land out of production if it's detected to have potato wart?
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, I believe they still farm that land.
Yes, but I'm talking about potato. Is it taken out of? Are they banned? I'm told that the Netherlands banned potato planting in infested fields for 20 years.
Yeah, I can't answer that. I don't know that for sure.
Oh, you can't?
I thought maybe they still plant starch potatoes in some of that land, but I guess I don't know for sure.
Does PEI ban any potato planting in land that has been potato wart has been detected in?
The management plan is a CFIA plan. It's a federal government plan, and in that plan, after many years, once it's found that the field is pest free or below a certain threshold, they can plant potatoes in those fields. But we have started an initiative to eliminate all the index fields. We're going to plant them into trees. The PEI industry and government.
That's a good step, because again, the management plan in the earlier testimony, Mr. Donald, was that the management plan that you referred to as CFIAs is not CFIAs. They said it's a management plan that was developed jointly with the industry and the government of PEI. that CFIA protects or enforces as well. A comment, Mr. Donald, on the possibility of a U.S. Federal order that could have come down. What's your thoughts on that, given the implications? If the U.S. Ag Department had issued a federal order closing the border, would it be more difficult to negotiate than CFIA dealing with APHIS, their American counterpart, on a scientific basis?
I guess I'll ask you a question, Mr. Morrissey. How do you know they were going to put a U.S. federal order in place?
Well, that's the information that was provided to the government of Canada through the Ag Secretary. At the same time, November the 22nd, the government of the United States ordered their border security to not allow any potatoes across the border, whether they were CFIA certified or not. So the reality of, and in discussions, and the government of PEI was involved in those discussions on the issue of the U.S. government issuing a federal order, which has been evidence given by CFIA and various other participants in the panel, that order would have been much more difficult to deal with and to get resolved or changed in the steps that were taken by the government of Canada to date.
Has the government of Canada have you seen the U.S. federal order that was drafted?
Well, Mr. Donald, yes, it's not argumentative, but they didn't issue it. So that was, they backed off on that from negotiations from the government of Canada. To ensure that we followed the scientific CFIA route, which everybody in the industry has acknowledged and advised that route would have less of a negative impact on the industry than a federal order. I have a final question, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Rosser. Mr. Rosser, could you elaborate a bit? There was some discussion that hasn't come up on the National Potato Wart Survey that was done this past summer across Canada. Is that something you could speak to? I would have preferred to ask the question to CFIA, but the National Potato Wart Survey, could you comment on that?
30 seconds, Mr. Rosser, and then we have to wrap up.
Just very briefly, Mr. Chair, it is something that CFIA is better placed to speak to than I. My understanding, though, is that that work is expected to be completed shortly in the coming weeks. But I'm sure colleagues at CFIA would be happy to provide additional detail in writing.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. Thank you, Mr. Rosser. Look, if you'll indulge me as the chair, not to ask a question, but just simply to thank our witnesses on both panels for their participation, to all members on the committee for the important questions that were raised today. And I know that there would be stakeholders from Prince Edward Island and across the country that are watching into our committee work. Certainly, I think I speak on behalf of all parliamentarians on this group that we share the concern and want to do everything we can to help support, as does the government. So just certainly we appreciate to the members the good questions, to the witnesses your time, especially this close to the holiday season. So thank you very much. With that, I would move that we close today's meeting. I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and to my clerk and to the analyst, we look forward to seeing you and everyone else in the new year with a subcommittee. So please keep your eyes peeled for that email.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Joyeuses fêtes, tout le monde.
Mm-hmm.